What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another reaction video, and in this one we have how do Europe and the United States compare? Before we jump in and figure this out, what I need you guys to do is to smash that subscribe button, get a video a thumbs up, and let's dive in.
Europe. One continent, 44 countries, according to the UN, and 746 million people. The United States are part of North America, only one country with 329 million people, less than half of Europe. The United States are often compared to the European Union or Europe as a whole a lot of times. So in this video, I thought it would be interesting to take a look at a few indicators and check how it is that they in fact compare. We've already covered a few of the basics, amount of countries and population.
We will look at all of Europe, not just the EU.
But what about size? The United States have an area of around 9.8 million square kilometers, while Europe has a size of around 10.5 million.
I have just so much more people compared to the size difference. They have a little bit bigger. Europe as a whole is just a bit bigger than the US when the population is over double the US.
Although this can vary depending on which limits you attribute to the continent. So now that we've covered all of those basics, let's jump into a few specific indicators and find out how the two compare. First, comparing the latitude. It's very interesting to see the overlay of the European cities on top of the US territory and vice versa. For instance, as stupid as it may sound, I had no idea Reykjavik was as further north as northern Canada. The same applies to Oslo. It makes sense that Portuguese and Spanish cities are on the same level as California, at least climate-wise, but it's weird, for instance, that Ankara is at the same level as Delaware. For some reason, I always thought it was so much further south. It's also strange to see that Los Angeles is on the same latitude as Algeria in North Africa, or that New York is at the same latitude as Azerbaijan. Speaking of Portugal, Spain, and California, both the US and Europe compare when it comes to the hours of sunlight they get every year. Through this map, we understand that the Southwest USA gets more hours of sun than anywhere in Europe, over 3,500 a year. And
that's Cali. Hey, a tad bit in Texas. That's too hot. That's too much. You know, it's a such thing as too much sun. I love sun. I love the summertime. But it's such thing as too much sun.
Like Europe, there's nowhere in the US that gets less than 1,800 hours of sun, as is the case in many areas of Europe, those in light green, blue, and dark blue. It's also odd, at least to me who isn't an expert on this matter, how the amount of hours of sun isn't directly related to the latitude of the region. I always assumed that the closer to the equator you are, the more hours of sun you get, but we can see on this map that this isn't the case at all, even though we can tell that usually southern areas get more sun. If you know which other factors determine hours of sun, let me know in the comments. Another interesting topic is human development. The United States and Europe are arguably two of the most developed areas of the world. This map compares the Human Development Index of each US state and each European country. In case you don't know, the HDI is calculated as the geometric mean of life expectancy, education, and gross national income per capita, assuming that...
Okay, so so US human development is, it's pretty good. It's pretty good most places. I come from Texas, and I'm pretty happy that it's up there. I now live in Georgia / Tennessee. It may not be as good from what I'm seeing, but that's okay.
That those indicators are representative of the quality of life of people, it seeks to measure precisely that. In the United States, there's only one state that doesn't make it into the top 3 HDI categories, Mississippi. When we look at Europe, only a handful of countries are in the top ranking: Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Ireland, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, and Switzerland. And when you look at Eastern Europe, these levels go significantly down, with many countries in the lowest category, such as Ukraine, Turkey, Serbia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Albania, and North Macedonia. In Western Europe, Portugal is the only country who isn't in the top 3 levels of HDI. A somewhat subjective comparison of these two areas is also depicted in this other map. This is based in a 2014 Pew Research Center poll. It's almost 10 years old, so the
50 to
data might be
69.
somewhat outdated and no longer valid. Always keep that in mind for these types of videos where data and maps are presented. The data might not be 100% right and it might be outdated.
I thought Europe was like mostly, I guess, Christian. I thought that's where the U.S. got it from. I thought maybe I'm wrong. God dang. Okay, so they Europe as a whole in general don't. I mean, they may believe in Christianity, but they not absolutely sure, or they just don't believe in it, and so that's why it's a lot of yellow. I did not know that. That's a very significant difference between the two countries. Wow.
But in this one, people were asked if they are absolutely certain of God's existence. And the comparison of the results between the US and Europe is astonishing. The majority of US states have over 50% of people being certain of God's existence, some even surpassing 70%, those in dark blue. Only Vermont, Maine, and Massachusetts have results under 50%, while most of Europe is much less certain in their belief of God. Most of the continent is in yellow, with only 10 to 29% being certain of their belief. Portugal, Poland, Slovakia, Lithuania, and Ukraine, along with Bulgaria, go up to 30 or 49%, but still not reaching over half of the population. The rest of the Balkans is more religious, but it's only Georgia and Armenia who reach the dark blue level. There's a few countries missing from this map, those in gray. If you have any idea of how religious they are, leave a comment below. Another interesting thing we can compare are age restrictions in the US and Europe. Age restrictions can be applied to driving, voting, tobacco, or alcohol purchases. Many of these change often, so be aware these might not be correct at the moment you watch. When it comes to driving, the US government allows people to drive at a much younger age. In South Dakota, it says you can drive at 14 years and 6 months. That's kind of...
South Dakota. What y'all doing over there?
Crazy if it's true. The oldest driving age in the US seems to be New Jersey at 17. While in Europe, the vast majority of countries has an 18 years minimum driving age. Only the UK, Iceland, Hungary, and Georgia have lowered it to 17. When it comes to voting, 18 is common all around. Only in Europe are there two countries that differ, Austria at 16 and Greece at 17. Although I'm not sure if these limits are the same for all types of elections. Tobacco purchase is technically only allowed over 21 in all of the US, while in Europe you can buy it at 18.
I think Europe got it right on that. If you can make a decision to vote, you should be able to make a decision to use tobacco or alcohol. But I guess the statistics in the laws against younger people drinking, the statistics do go down and not allowing the younger people for the U.S. When it comes to accidents.
Alcohol purchasing is also forbidden for people under 21 all across the United States, with the limit ages varying a lot across Europe, but none being higher than 18 or 20. Although again, this also varies depending on the type of alcohol. For instance, in Portugal, I think you can buy beer or wine as long as you're over 18, but other drinks do have a 20-year age limit, I think. When it comes to comparison between military, for instance, it's a difficult comparison to make. According to Wikipedia, the US Army has a personnel of around 1 million, counting active troops, reserves, and National Guard. And according to this 2018 article from Business Insider, the top 5 strongest militaries in Europe, all of these maps exclude Russia, are France with 390,000, the UK 280, Italy 267, Germany 200, and Spain 175. Together, these alone would surpass the US Army, although you'd still need to take into account the material advantage of the US. Ships, intelligence, tanks, planes, investment, and in these the US has a considerable advantage, as we can see from this graph, depicting the investment comparisons.
That's crazy that we spend that much on defense spending. 801 billion. The next 9 countries combined. Jesus.
Most of Europe and the US are allied through NATO, so a comparison isn't needed because in the event of a conflict, it is very likely they would be on the same side. And what about an economic comparison? The United States and the European Union are the two largest economies globally in nominal terms. In recent years, only in 2011 did the European Union have a higher GDP than the US. Keep in mind this excludes non-EU Europe. The US's GDP per capita is 63,000, while in the EU it's 33. But keep in mind both of these are on average. There are EU countries and US states with higher and lower values. Also, as we can
I
see
feel
from these
that.
maps, the US's GDP is mostly carried by California, Texas,
Yeah.
Florida, and New York, while Europe's is
Hey.
mostly carried by France,
Oh.
Germany, the UK, Spain, and Italy. When it comes to currency comparison, as I make this video, 1 euro equals $1.07.
Shout out to the
The
euro.
euro's value has been higher, and recently its value has decreased a little, approaching parity with the dollar. As we can see from this graph, there was only a short period in the early 2000s when the euro was worth less than the dollar, and there was a point where it
Oh,
was almost
dang.
worth 50% more. Recently, things have stabilized and they're almost worth the same, but with Croatia joining the European currency next year, it might go up again. Also, keep in mind, not all of Europe and not even all of the EU use the euro as their currency. Another interesting
Oh.
point to compare is the percentage of young people aged 18 to 34 that
Ah, this is
still
interesting.
live in their family's home, meaning in most cases they do not yet have the financial stability to live on their own. Both of these maps have
Okay.
data from 2015, but from the most recent information I could find about this, the numbers haven't changed a lot. In Europe, Nordic countries have very low values. They're also the highest income areas, so it
Dang.
makes sense people
They getting up. They getting up out of there. They said 18. We up out of there. It's time for us to go make this money. It's time for us to get to the bread. Okay. And then there's not much in a lot of these countries. Not much kids to stay at home. Young age 25 to 34. Oh, I thought it was. So 25 to 30. You shouldn't be living at home at 25 to 34, dog. That's kind of wild. So, but their map is only 25. What's 18 to 34? Why are they 18 to 34 and there's 25 to 34? Oh, it shows the USA 13.9% from 25 to 30. Yeah, you got to be getting up out of there. But I know a lot of countries like value family like so strong. I think stronger than the US, and where it's just like you stay with your family, like y'all live together. It seems like forever, and then the next generation inherits the house and everything, and then you just continue to stay together. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, it seems like for the most part, a good number of the countries, kids getting up out of there, 25, 34, starting their own thing, especially in them Nordic countries.
who can more easily afford to live on their own, but it might also have to do with the cultural element. In Southern Europe, the amount of young people still living at home is tremendous. 44% in Portugal, 37% in Spain, and 46% in Italy, for instance, while Greece, Bulgaria, and Slovakia are all above 50%. In the US, values are equally as high, with the difference being that there are no states at all below 10%. The lowest value is 14% in North Dakota, and the highest being in New Jersey with 46%, although none surpass 50%. These high values are usually connected with the fact that salaries do not pay enough and the cost of living is way too high. Both due
in America, you live out, Europe too. I guess you living at home with your parents nowadays. It's understandable, bro. This cost of living is an absolute killer.
to rising prices,
It's a killer.
inflation, and also other factors. So that is how the United States and Europe compare in a number of indicators and interesting aspects. There's a lot of things you can compare the two in. If you know of any more, leave a comment and I can always make a part 2 of this. It's always difficult to be fair in these comparisons. After all, the United States are a single country and Europe has around 44, but if you take into account that the US are a federal state consisting of 50 states, the comparison makes a little more sense, especially when the size of the two is similar. As we can see on this interactive map, the size of the US over Europe is pretty close, and as you saw in the beginning, the number of square kilometers are pretty close as well. In many ways they are similar, but in so many other big differences are visible, many of which signifying a great difference in the way that people live their life and the quality that life has. Thanks so much for watching this video. Subscribe if you want to catch future videos and leave a comment below with your opinions. I will see you next time for more general knowledge.
Well, that was very interesting. I didn't expect to get this many charts and this many comparisons between Europe and the USA, but I felt like it was cool comparing the two countries in so many different aspects that I truly never even thought about. I'm intrigued to hear what you guys have to say about some of these comparisons. I think some of the comparisons where I grew in Europe with is the alcohol and the tobacco. I feel like if you're old enough to vote or you're old enough to apply to join the military or the army, then you should be old enough to make a decision to drink or smoke. And so let me know what you guys think. Do you think the U.S. is wild on some of them? Do you think Europe's rules are wild on some of them? Or just comparisons military-wise or any other comparisons that you could think of. That's all we have for this video. If you guys enjoyed, please don't forget to subscribe, get a video a like, and then check out that next video. I'll see you guys there.